knew that tulips were an incredibly diverse family of plants, but I had no clue just how diverse this class of flowers was until I started growing them myself on a somewhat larger scale. 2 years ago, I gave tulip growing a try for the first time. I threw 600 bulbs, which equated to just 3 different varieties, into an empty bed within my landscape. For a flower farm, the results weren't overly impressive, but that didn't matter because I realized then that I was hooked on these early spring blooms. This past year, we really upped the ante and I grew over 7,000 tulip bulbs in a small grow space in my basement using only the ambient temperature of this old farmhouse that I live in. What I loved most about this past season is that we got to grow 18 different varieties of tulips, and I felt like I got a much more fully rounded experience into the different tulip varieties that exist. You guys have been asking me for a while which varieties I loved and which I could do without. And so in this video, I wanted to share in more detail which varieties were my absolute favorites and why. Now, if you're a home gardener or perhaps a flower farmer wanting to grow tulips on a smaller scale, you're going to want to take notes. Many of these varieties that I share today will be available during our fall bulb sale, which I'll share more details on as we get closer. So if you're ready to discuss all things tulips, grab a cup of coffee or your favorite drink and let's go. As I just said, we trialed 18 different varieties this year, and that included a good mix of the different types of tulips that currently exist. If you thought all tulips shared that same traditional single cup shape, then you may not even be aware of what you're missing out on. But yes, there's a wide range when it comes to the different types of tulips. Just so that we're all on the same page, let's quickly run down the different types that exist, starting with single tulips. Now, single tulips include varieties that sport a more traditional tulip shape. Of all the tulip types, single varieties are probably the most recognizable. Double tulips, often referred to as peony flowering tulips, have extra layers of petals and often resemble a peony bloom, hence their label. Parrot tulips are known for having more ruffled and textured petals, and fringe tulips, much like their name implies, have a distinct frayed edge to their petals. Now, as we work our way through the different varieties of tulips that we grew this season, I promise to sprinkle in tips and tricks that I've learned that will help you to have a successful tulip season on your own farm. So you're going to want to watch this video the entire way through. So let's start with a question that I've been asked quite frequently. If specialty types of tulips exist, like those parrot and double varieties that I just mentioned, well, why would someone choose to grow the more standard single tulips? And I get it. In fact, I questioned the same idea myself ahead of my first tulip season as I was trying to decide on which tulip varieties to grow. Ultimately, I decided to include a number of single varieties in my lineup of tulips so I could offset the higher price tag that accompanied the more specialty varieties. Including single varieties within my order meant that my average price per bulb decreased. I really wanted to give myself enough margin so I could have a profitable season. Now, before you get it stuck in your head that single tulips are boring, just know that there's plenty of single tulip varieties that are interesting enough to capture the attention of your customers. Plus, there's also plenty of single varieties that mix well with the fancier, more pricier doubles and parrots and fringe varieties. I'll actually share some of my favorite combinations in a bit. But by offering mixed bouquets of tulips, that's another way that you can sprinkle in plenty of single varieties while still providing a premium product to your customer at a great price point. So now that you're hopefully a little bit more open to single varieties, let me share with you some of my favorites. Prima Vista was our earliest blooming variety and proved to be a great start to our tulip season. I especially loved these bright and bold blooms that teetered on the edge of pink and red. As this variety aged, the petals opened up to reveal a beautifully dark throat. For me, this variety is a perfect pop of color that can be enjoyed on your counter, or plant this in your landscape for a truly impressive display of flowers come spring. Strong Love is another single variety that belongs to the red family. Petals are a bit more elongated, especially when compared to Prima Vista, and I personally love how neatly this variety ages. So the blooms of this variety tend to stay closed for the entirety of their vase life. The petals don't easily drop. If you're someone that prefers that your tulips do not drop their petals, this variety may be for you. As you can see from these photos, Strong Love has long, sturdy stems and would work great as a cut flower or as a landscape flower as well. Russolini is, in my opinion, a great bridge between Prima Vista and Strong Love. So Russolini is a beautiful purple color. It somewhat resembles Strong Love in that it also has slightly elongated petals. And like Prima Vista, Russolini does open as it ages. What I think is especially fun about this variety is that the petals seem to reflex back as it opens. It's a small quirk that's a bit unexpected, and it's probably why I enjoy this variety so much. Now, if you haven't put it together already, this is one of my first combinations that I'd suggest to you. We sold mixed bouquets of these 3 tulip varieties, Prima Vista, Strong Love, and Russolini, and our customers were delighted by the colors. Okay, moving on to something a little less vibrant. Candy Prince was one of my favorite pastel varieties that we grew this past season. I just love the kind of statement these pale purple blooms made when displayed together in a vase. Now, I'm not sure if this is a characteristic of Candy Prince or if it was because of something that I did, but I did find that my Candy Prince tulips, they bloomed on some wonky stems. While the flowers stayed upright, there was some topsy-turviness to the blooms as I was harvesting them. Now, this wasn't enough of a problem for me that I would knock it off my list, but it is something to consider if you're after the straightest stems possible. If you want muted pastel tones and strong, straight stems, you may want to add Salmon Van Eyck to your list. Salmon Van Eyck is a beautifully soft pink. It's a little bit more subtle than the other more vivid varieties that I've already shared in this video, but I do think there's plenty of customers that enjoy this unique coloring. If you're a grower that sells to florists, you may want to consider adding this beauty to your list, as I can see this color working well in design work for early spring weddings and other events. Okay, back to bright and bold. Delta Storm is a must grow if you like orange. I especially loved how upon closer inspection, the coloring on the petals, it resembled like paint strokes, as if the coloring of this flower was painted on by Mother Nature herself. It's a very subtle but nonetheless very magical detail, and it's really why I fell in love with this specific variety. I will definitely be growing this once again. Another unique single variety worth growing is Sunrise Dynasty. Unlike the other single varieties that are a single color, Sunrise Dynasty features a beautiful ombre effect that is very similar to a real sunrise. And like Russolini, the petals of this variety also tend to reflex back when they open. It's an all-around center of a flower, another for sure must grow. Of the 9 single tulip varieties that we grew this year, only 2 have me questioning whether or not we'll grow them again. The first one that I'm on the fence about is Apricot Beauty. Now, in full disclosure, if I were growing tulips purely for myself and not worrying about selling them to customers, well, then without a doubt, I'd grow Apricot Beauty. But this tulip variety has a few characteristics that have me thinking twice about what I'm going to do. You see, Apricot Beauty is a bit more unruly with her growth habit. This variety is one that I'd likely describe as wild and carefree, and my customers that are true tulip fans, well, they really appreciated like how the stems of this variety sort of dance in the vase as it aged. Tulips by nature will dance and follow the light once they're cut, but not everyone appreciates this. My customers that perhaps aren't as well versed with tulips, they much prefer tulips that stay upright and behave in a much more controlled manner and have a bit of a sturdier stem. I think this is one variety that if you're selling to customers, it's important to manage your customers' expectations and really share with them how they can expect their tulips to behave. Now, another strike against this tulip variety is the simple fact that it has a lot of foliage that grows near the bottom of the stem. With so much foliage, it can take much more time to harvest and then process these tulips. When you're growing tulips on a large scale and efficiency matters, things like too much foliage can make a big difference. Here you can see and you can compare just how much cleaner the stems are on this different variety of tulips. What Apricot Beauty has working for it though is that it has the most uniquely apricot-y blush color that you just don't see in other tulip varieties. This variety is also mildly fragrant and features blooms that are reminiscent of how citrus smells. If you're looking for a little encouragement to sell Apricot Beauty to your customers, I will say that Apricot Beauty paired well with Candy Prince. It's a perfectly pastel combo that works great for sales around the Easter holiday. Now, Ile de France is a final single variety that we grew this season. I believe that this tulip variety is a little bit more common, and while it was perfectly beautiful, I just think that when compared to the other varieties that we were growing this year, this tulip variety left something to be desired. The tulip blooms were your standard red, and the cups of this tulip were on the petite side, and so I felt a little bit more limited with how I was able to sell this flower. I definitely sold this variety included in a mix rather than selling it as straight bunches on its own. Now, you may have some luck selling this variety to floral designers, as I do think that the small blooms would make a wonderful accent in floral arrangements. But again, because this is a no frills kind of flower, I'm really just not sure of what kind of price that this variety would command on a wholesale level. It might be something that you'd want to check into before growing this yourself. For my home gardeners, I do think that this variety would work great for landscape plantings, especially since this was one of the cheaper tulip varieties that I purchased this past year. It would be rather affordable to plant a mass planting of these. While an individual stem of Ile de France may be a bit underwhelming, I do think that when planted in large quantities, this would provide a great pop of color. Actually, if you look close to this rather simple flower installation that I did earlier this season, the red tulips that you see in pots here, that's Ile de France, and I think it works perfectly in this sort of situation. Now let's move on to the more specialty stuff, the double varieties. As sort of a general observation, I did notice that the double varieties that I grew, they had slightly shorter stems than the single types. Stems were still plenty long for bouquets, but it's still worth noting if stem length is a deciding factor for you. To start, I'm going to share about both Mary Jo and Verona together. Despite being different tulip varieties, these tulips are remarkably similar, the only difference being their color. Mary Jo is a bright and vibrant yellow color, whereas Verona is on the creamier side. I wouldn't describe Verona as a true cream. I do think that as this bloom opens and ages that it takes on more of a yellow hue. Now, it's nowhere near as bright as Mary Jo, but in my opinion, the yellowness is still there. Now, what I absolutely love about these two varieties is how they put on a show as they open in the vase. Most of my customers couldn't believe that these were in fact tulips. These varieties open so big and large and feature so many petals that you're often left wondering if you're looking at a peony or a garden rose. For me, stems of these varieties weren't as upright and sturdy, and I do think that's in part due to the fact that the head of these tulips are so large and heavy, but that won't keep me from growing these beauties in the future. Now, if you're looking for strong stems and big beefy blooms, then look no further than Orange Princess. Just to be clear, I hate describing blooms as beefy. I think it conjures up the wrong sort of visual, but in this situation it works. And if you happen to see these blooms in person, I think you'll understand what I'm talking about here. Orange Princess features these deep orange petals that are striped with streaks of red. While the petals of this tulip variety don't drop as the flower ages, the head itself seems to grow with time, putting on a really impressive show. Another fun novelty of this variety is the fact that I often encountered multiple blooms per stem. Now, I'm not sure if this is a normal occurrence within Orange Princess or if what I experienced was merely a fluke, but it was a fun surprise to sort of get, 2 for 1 with some of the stems. If you like varieties that are more on the odd side, consider adding Orange Princess to your list, as it's always a fun surprise seeing what you'll get. Freeman is on the shorter side when it comes to stem length, which is why we decided to grow this variety in pots rather than in bouquets. We timed this variety so that it would bloom around Easter time, and these pots sold well for us during our Easter sale. This variety is a beautiful golden color. It's a double variety and has plenty of petals. I would 100% grow this tulip variety again, but if there's anything I learned about offering potted tulips to your customers, is that sometimes they want more colors than just yellow. Now, I'm not sure if purple was just the color trend for this past year, but we received lots of requests for purple potted tulips, and unfortunately didn't have anything like that to offer our customers. Columbus is a great all-season double tulip. I found that this tulip was so versatile, being that it paired well with most every variety that we grew. We mixed Columbus blooms with Russolini and Prima Vista early on in our season for fun mixed bouquets around the Valentine's holiday. And we also paired Columbus with pastels like Candy Prince and Apricot Beauty around the Easter holiday. Columbus also looks great on its own. I mean, its raspberry pink petals are edged in a creamy white. The bloom opens nice and wide as the flower ages, and it puts on a spectacular show in the vase. And if I couldn't love this variety anymore, what really makes me appreciate Columbus is the fact that out of all the specialty varieties, Columbus tends to be on the lower end price-wise, making it a very profitable flower for flower farmers. If there's one flower that I did not expect to love, it would be Pink Star. Pink Star was a diva in my grow space all season long. She took nearly twice as long to flower as any of the other varieties that I grew, and as she grew and matured, the developing flower buds sort of looked brown, almost like an old antique dusty rose. I really was ready to throw these flowers in the compost pile, but then I saw her open in a vase. And wow, Pink Star has earned her spot right then and there as my favorite tulip variety that we grew all season. Pink Star is a fully double soft pink tulip with highlights of apricot in the blooms. I'm sort of thankful that this tulip variety took so long to grow because for us she bloomed right around Mother's Day, and this was the perfect variety to offer for those special bouquets. Professor Roentgen is certainly a statement flower. This parrot-style tulip variety, it features thick, tall stems. The blooms themselves are these beautiful deep orange petals that are streaked with flecks of green. The blooms open wide and put on quite a spectacle as they do. Okay, you guys know by now that I always like to share the good as well as our fails, and for us this past season, Super Parrot was a fail. From the pictures, Super Parrot looks like this classic white tulip with the added fun of some green feathering on each petal. Unfortunately for us, the Super Parrot bulbs that we planted did not bloom last season, and if they did, the flowers were quite stunted. Not what I was imagining at all. I really do think that we just got a bad bunch of bulbs when it came to Super Parrot, and that's why so few of ours bloomed. It was a disappointing experience, but I'm open to trying this variety once more before I cross her off my list entirely. You know, that's just how flower farming goes sometimes. There's always misses among the successes. Well, there you have it, an up-close and personal look at our tulip season. While I feel like we grew a lot of different varieties this year, the list that I shared in this video is nowhere near a complete record of all the beauty that is available out there. If you're looking to add tulips to your flower lineup, I can't encourage you enough to just go for it. Choose whichever varieties catch your eye and don't overthink it. The truth is, while I may have a few favorite varieties, I truly never met a tulip that I didn't like. If you have tulip varieties that you've grown that are your absolute favorites, I'd love for you to share more about them in the comments below. You know, help your fellow flower growers out as we all compile our must-grow lists. Don't forget that if you're looking for bulbs that you can grow these specialty varieties yourself, we do host an online bulb sale each fall so that we can share these fun varieties with all of you, our flower friends. If you're wanting more details on when that sale goes live each year, then give us a follow on either Facebook or Instagram at Two Sisters Flower Farm, as we always share more information there. Alright guys, thank you so much for being here. Before you go, if you enjoyed the content of this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing if you haven't already. As always, I will see you guys back here soon. Bye now.